win, there will be a bloodbath. It's outrageous. What he's talking about is outrageous. The idea that he's actually threatened retribution. This is the United States of America. Did you ever think you'd ever hear anything like this? Also, an audio obtained by MSNBC, President Biden also mused about the possibility, if Trump were to win again, of more Trump appointees sitting on the nation's highest court. That court already has one justice whose home had a flag flown upside down in front of it, that flag in solidarity with the insurrection and the insurrectionists, and a second justice whose wife was actively involved in planning the coup. Not to mention, every day that goes by without a ruling on whether Trump is immune from prosecution is another day that Trump gets closer to avoiding accountability for the crimes committed on January 6th. Here's what the president said about Trump and the court.
The next president is likely to have 2 new Supreme Court nominees. 2 more. He's already appointed 2 that have been very negative in terms of the rights of individuals. The idea that if he's reelected, he's going to appoint 2 more flying flags upside down is really, I really mean it.
Could this be the scariest part of all of it?
Well, I think it is one of the scariest parts of it. Look, the Supreme Court has never been as out of kilter as it is today. I mean, never.
The Biden re-election campaign bringing Donald Trump's felony conviction and his disregard for the rule of law front and center in the 2024 presidential campaign is where we start today. Former U.S. Senator, co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire McCaskill, is here. Also joining us, Princeton University professor and distinguished political scholar, our friend Eddie Glaude is back. Also joining us, former RNC spokesman, the host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's here, and former top official at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Andrew Weissman's back with us. Claire, I start with you. I just want to put this out there. I think the campaign needs to start with these big buys to send a signal to even its top surrogates about what the message is. I've had some of the best Biden surrogates on. They've all got a 6-minute answer to what the campaign's about. And something about an ad like this focuses the mind of the country and the voters as well as the spokespeople.
Yeah, Nicole, as you know, and I know somewhat painfully, good campaigns are based on repetition and discipline. You say the same things over and over again to the point that you frankly just like go, please don't make me say it again. But repetition works. And I think sometimes surrogates forget that what seems obvious to them is not obvious to everyone. I mean, keep in mind, we've seen polling where there was a huge chunk of voters that thought somehow Joe Biden was responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned. I mean, that's how, frankly, disengaged the voters are that are going to decide this election. So the sooner the Biden White House sends very clear signals about a very crisp message, and they begin to repeat it until all of us who pay close attention get tired of it, the minute we're really tired of it is the minute it may start working.
That's exactly right. And then, you know, about 3 weeks longer. Tim Miller, someone who got the memo, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Let me show you what he had to say.
Donald Trump was convicted of 34 counts by a jury of his peers after being held liable for rape. And the discussion at the water cooler is whether that should be an issue in the presidential race. Remember, there are 54 more indictments to be adjudicated. We're already in the pot, folks. Republicans have been increasing the temperature for 8 years. We better hop out soon or it's going to boil us all to death. And MAGA is laughing at us while they turn up the heat. They preach law and order, all while Republican leaders show up in a courtroom in New York City paying fealty to their felonious king.
Tim, I love this. I mean, this is the whole thing, right? I mean, this is Trump, who he is, and this is MAGA, what they're doing. We are all in the pot. Someone had to say it.
Yeah, more J.B. Pritzker, please. Maybe get that guy on Fox or into the swing states. Because I agree with you, Nicole. Sometimes that there is just a lack of clarity from people who are supportive of the president about like what the message here, what the contrast is here. The Biden ad at the very end of it, I think, sums it up pretty well. That Donald Trump only cares about himself, and Joe Biden's actually working for you. That's a good message. But then the details of what Donald Trump has done and what he's been held liable for. I think my favorite thing in that ad and in the J.B. Pritzker comments is that they are bringing up the fact that he has been held liable for sexual assault. And in addition to that, in the ad, bring up the fact that he committed business fraud twice, really. One in the more recent case, but then in the Trump University case as well. A lot of people don't know this, to Clara's point. A lot of people, a lot of experts, a lot of media pundits and know-it-alls have been like, well, after the Access Hollywood tape, Trump won anyway, so the voters don't care about his, propensity for sexual assault. That's just not true. Some voters don't care. Some MAGA voters don't care, but there are some voters that do not know the story of E. Jean Carroll, of Summer Zervos, of all these other women that have been assaulted by Trump. And I think doing an ad that leans into that message, that talks about his criminality, not just in the Bragg case, but his pattern of criminality, including January 6th, is a strong contrast that we see in polls can work, but, they've got to drive it. And so this ad does a good job of getting that moving.
Well, because I have you, and because you're good at forcing me to rethink the way I was going to have these conversations, Tim, an ad, we all know, even in the old information era, an ad wasn't enough. What does the rest of it look like? I mean, what do? You paint a bus with jail bars on it and you drive around circle. I mean, what do you do? What does the rest of the campaign look like to make sure people know just the adjudicated facts about Trump? Forget about the things he probably won't be tried for before the election, but just the adjudicated liability and criminality. What do you do? How do you make sure people know that?
Yeah, look, the ad is a good start. I'm concerned. I think there are a lot of experts that are concerned about what's happening on TikTok, talking to younger voters. We can get the J.B. Pritzker clips, but they need other clips, getting the celebrities out there, getting the influencers online with very short, very to-the-point messages about Trump's history of, Trump's crimes, Trump's sexual assaults. I think that's extremely important. And frankly, I've got nothing but respect for the vice president, but traditionally, that has been the vice president's role, to be an attack dog. And I think that maybe that there are legitimate concerns that related to misogyny or whatever about having a female vice president, the first female vice president, being an attack dog. But she was a prosecutor. And Joe Biden, for all of his strengths, I don't think prosecuting this is his top strength, let's just say. I think it could be Kamala Harris's top strength, and I think it includes more from her and from other people in the cabinet as well carrying the message.
Eddie, Vice President Kamala Harris is the best administration messenger in a post-Dobbs America, and she's gotten to know some of the women impacted. I think she's done events in the states where these brutal bans have become the law of the land. I've had some of the plaintiffs on from the Texas lawsuit. Their stories are harrowing. I mean, just talk to me about the conversations. It's go time, right? Like, I had 5 of the top surrogates on in 7 days just to really understand where the campaign was message-wise. And this program, we have 2 hours. We let people be expansive. I don't interrupt them. I cannot tell you what the 30-second messages from the campaign for the opening round of summer. And I wonder what your thoughts are, 1, about sort of the state of the race, 2, this message that is in this new big ad buy, and 3, what they should do next.
Well, 3 is easy to answer. They need to listen to you and Claire and Tim and get clear on the message. I think that's really important. I think drawing the contrast as clearly as you can, tagging Donald Trump with the label of convicted criminal, I think is really important. And I think it's important for 2 different reasons, for 2 different audiences. One, when we think about the battleground states where this election is going to be won, Nicole, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it's important for the Biden campaign to speak to those swing voters and those independent voters who are holding their noses in support of the Republican Party. With a convicted felon at the head of the ticket, they may not turn out, and that's what we want to convince them to do, right? That's what the campaign wants to convince them to do, is not turn out or even vote for the Biden campaign. But the second audience, of course, are those younger voters, are those other voters who seem to be, he's too tepid, he's too oatmeal, he needs to fight more. And those are the folk that Tim's talking about that he needs to address on TikTok. So on the one hand, he's addressing those voters who are doubtful, that's independent and swing voters. And on the other hand, he's demonstrating that he has to fight. And in that, Kamala Harris needs to be deployed. The surrogates need to be deployed to be more aggressive in fighting for the stakes of the election. Remember how Molly Young Fast says, this is the election whether or not we will have a democracy. And they need to be clear about that as they make the rounds around the news.
I mean, Eddie, I feel like you always hold the mirror back up at us, and I don't want to miss that moment either. I mean, Pritzker saying we're in the pot is an important part of it, too. We're in the pot, folks. I mean, we are on slow simmer, slow bowl, and the MAGA Republicans keep turning up the heat. That's exactly right.
Absolutely. And what we cannot do in the midst of that is take on a crossfire framework as if the opponent is a traditional, rational political actor. We need to understand the stakes, and that is as the media. We need to understand the stakes. We need to hold these folk accountable. And every time we hold them accountable, they cry victim, they cry foul. That's because, Nicole, at the end of the day, they assume as part of their calculus that we're going to behave as if everything is normal. That assumption is baked in to their task of turning up the heat. And we need to take that assumption off the table, to mix all of my metaphors as I just did.
I love it. I love it. So, Andrew Weissman, President Biden did something that I've been asking about on this show for years. When are Democrats going to turn the Supreme Court into a political issue as potent as what the Republicans have done with the Supreme Court for 50 years? The answer was at a fundraiser in Los Angeles. And President Biden did it pretty respectfully, but it is vital that he continue to say this to the electorate. Imagine if Trump made two more, or Trump made three. I mean, the damage that could be done in that single power of a president to pick appointees for the Supreme Court is almost immeasurable.
Absolutely. So I think it goes to the theme that, like, facts matter and elections matter. And, you know, if it's repeating over and over again that Dobbs happened because of Trump, that message needs to go out. I also think that in many ways people are thinking too small in terms of what could happen under Trump presidency. It's not just that he will have the power to take a 6-3 majority and, you know, and capitalize on that. He can do more than that. Depending on what happens in Congress, he can seek to expand the court. He can seek to restrict the powers of the court, which are set by statute to a large extent. In other words, it's not a given that they can serve as a check, even if he doesn't have a majority. There are lots of things he can do, and I am sure he is looking over at Bibi Netanyahu going, why on God's green earth didn't I think of that? We know that he does not want to have any check on his power, whether it's attacking you and your colleagues in the media, whether it's attacking people at DOJ, whether it's now attacking judges, jurors, witnesses. The same thing will happen with the courts. That is the last possible check on his power. And of course, he will be thinking about ways to do that above and beyond the simple appointment process, as if that's not bad